Next from Springfield, we talked to Abe Scarr, the director of the Illinois Public Interest Research Group, about a bill the House recently passed that would allow for automatic voter registration whenever an eligible citizen receives services at a designated state agency. This runs about 7 minutes.
Abe Scarr, thanks for joining us on the Illinois Channel. We wanted to talk to you as we're going into this election cycle. We always hear every election about the right to vote, and sometimes people can't vote because they didn't register soon enough. There's some changes, as I understand, underway. What can you tell us about that?
So we're working to pass an automatic voter registration law. What this would mean is that when you go to government agencies like driver services and you have the opportunity to vote, we're changing it from what it is now, where it's an opt-in system, and only a handful of people get registered that way. It's a decent amount, but there's a lot of people who are eligible that don't get registered. We want to change that to an opt-out system, and we think many more people will get registered that way, as well as many voter registrations will get updated, and that's really important so we have a more accurate list, so election day goes smoother.
So just simply put, if I go in to renew my driver's license, someone would ask me, are you registered to vote? And if I say no, then they would register me pretty much?
Basically, yeah, it is a little bit more complicated than that. The basic way it'll work at driver services is you'll still be offered the opportunity to opt in and register that way, and when you do opt in, they ask you to affirm that you're eligible to vote. That's you're a resident of Illinois, you'll be 18 or older by election day, and you're a United States citizen. What's different now is going to be that even for folks who don't opt in at that point, we're going to send files to the State Board of Elections who will look at the data in the file and identify more people who are eligible but didn't register or are registered but at the wrong address, and we'll update those files. And then people will get notified and be given an opportunity to opt out later.
Is there a bill? Is there a specific bill that people could follow?
Yes, it's Senate Bill 250. It's passed through the Senate already, and it's going through the House today with an amendment. So that means we have to get it back through the House and the Senate today. So it's coming down to the wire, but we're still confident it will go through.
And one of the fears, it's a joke, vote early, vote often, about voting shenanigans in Chicago, or Illinois politics, I should say. What guarantees, if any, would there be, and how soon before an election would one have to register to be able to vote in an election?
Well, thanks to Senate Bill 172, which passed a year and a half ago, we now have election day registration. So there's still kind of a preliminary deadline, which is a couple weeks out, but anybody who's eligible can show up on election day. If you go to the right polling place, you can register and vote. And this won't change that at all. What it will do is actually make it so that less people need to rely on election day registration. A lot of those people that go in, it's often because they moved but didn't update their registration. And actually Cook County in the March primary, they found that 75% of people who did register on election day used a state ID, and the address on the state ID was the same at which they were registering. So if we'd actually gotten them all registered when they went to the DMV, 75% of the people who register on election day would be out of that line. So we think that's going to make election day go a lot smoother for voters and for election officials.
I think I'm right in that the Board of Elections was initially against this legislation, but now they've removed their objections. What can you tell us? What accommodation was made so that they are now not opposing the legislation?
Yeah, so there were a couple things. One of the things we wanted to do was, in an effort to get our lists updated and more accurate, was do a data dump over the last year of data from these agencies and have them process that this fall so that we could register some people and update out-of-date registrations. They were worried that that was too much work to do on too short of a timeline, so we accommodated their request to take that out. The other thing had to do with how the other state agencies, so it's not just the DMV, there's 5 state agencies that do voter registration currently and will continue under this law. And we changed the way that the administrative burden is placed on the state board for the other state agencies, and that made them happy.
And then lastly, for those who would say, well, how do we know if someone just walks in that they're even qualified to vote? How do we know that they're not an illegal alien, that they aren't a resident of Illinois? I mean, are there any guarantees for that?
Yes, that's an excellent question. So there's a couple things. So in Illinois, if you're an undocumented immigrant, you can get a special driver's license called a temporary visitor's driver's license. So for folks applying for that type of driver's license, they'll never be part of this process at all. They'll be opted out. There still is the case, though, that legal immigrants, people working towards their citizenship or legal permanent residents, can get a normal driver's license, and we need a way to make sure that they don't end up on our voter registration lists. So the way we've set it up is to use the data that people show identification when they go to the driver's license facility. They need to document they need a photo ID, they need a signature, they need an address, and not everybody will document their citizenship as part of that process, but many people will by showing a U.S. passport or birth certificate. So we can use the data analysis to make sure that only if somebody has documented that they're eligible or has legally affirmed that they're eligible under the penalty of perjury, only in those circumstances will somebody get registered to vote. If they don't check those boxes, we can't tell that they're eligible or they don't legally affirm they're eligible, they won't get registered.
Do we have the data, I mean the computer power and everything to quickly cross-reference to know if the documents are given us, if they're actually living at those locations?
Yes, although that's one of the reasons why we are giving the State Board of Elections and the agencies some time to implement it. So to implement that part of the process, that won't get implemented until January 1st, 2018. So we wanted to make sure there was enough time to get that all set up. But it shouldn't be that hard. It's just going to take some reprogramming of the software.
And the very last question, if by chance you fail to get it through the legislature, we're up against the clock, right? They're going to be coming back in, so I guess that still buys you some time that this could happen over the summer if you fail today.
Certainly, yes. I think, as I mentioned, that for the big parts of the bill, that's a later implementation date. There are some other parts that we want to get passed sooner because it will clean up the list before this November election. We think that'll help make Election Day go smoother for voters. So we're certainly going to keep pushing, but we're hopeful we'll get it done today.
All right, well, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.